I want to officially welcome you to this webinar titled Behind a Rejection, Insights on Crafting Successful Cases. And that is exactly what we're going to do today. We have a great panel of experienced case writers, case publishers, and just professionals in this field that have a lot of relationships with successful award-winning case authors and have been able to get a collection of insights that will be helpful to you. So thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to let you know that this is going to be a 1-hour session and we will have questions at the end. So feel free to use the Q&A or the chat feature to leave your questions as they come up, and we will make the best effort to address as many as we can at the end. Great. Now, let's give you a little overview of the session just to refresh your memory. What makes a case stand out? How can you avoid the common mistakes that lead to rejection when you submit a case for publication? In this webinar, our panel of experts, as I just said, will walk you through the process of crafting impactful, successful case studies. We'll help you learn the critical factors that determine whether your case will get accepted, as well as common pitfalls to avoid. This is for you, whether you're a new case writer or an experienced author, whether you've been out of the game for a little while and want to get back to it, it doesn't matter, or whether you're just looking for a refresher, this is a session for you. So now I would like to introduce you your panelists this morning. First, we have Violetta Gallagher, who is the Associate Director of Product and Publishing at Ivy Publishing. Violetta is a great colleague. She is a very highly motivated professional who currently leads the team that develops and executes strategies to drive revenue and growth around across all Ivy products. She also plays a great role in facilitating these types of workshops and webinars. So you'll see her a lot. And she has a wealth of knowledge to share every single time. She also is great at ensuring engagement, collaboration, and championing Ivy Publishing, our brand, and what we do across the world. So if you follow her on LinkedIn, you'll see that she's always traveling, always bringing our products to business schools around the world. Next, we have Kira Harnett, who is our Publishing Operations Manager at Ivy Publishing. Kira is the person who leads the team that actually gets your cases published. She is the one who manages the day-to-day operations, streamlines the workflow, identifies any possible bottlenecks that we may have, and ensures author satisfaction and the continuous improvement of the processes that we have at Ivy Publishing. She's amazing. She has a great eye for detail, a great collaborative approach, and a dedication to supporting and enhancing the publishing experience for all of you. So if you've ever submitted a case for publication, you're very likely engaged with Kira in one way or another. Thank you, Kira, for being with us today. And finally, last but not least, we have our Ivy faculty guest, which is Andreas Schutter. He's there waving at you. Andreas is a professor of international business at Ivy Business School. And he has a long career in academia. He is a fellow at the John H. Dunning at Henley Business School, professor at the Vienna University of Economics and Business. He's a two-time Wall Street Journal Distinguished Professor of the Year, with an extensive global experience, having lived and worked across Canada, Europe, Asia, Australia, and the US, you name it. He's an industry professional and an academic excellent professor as well. He has nearly 20 years in executive roles in luxury goods, automotive, industrial machinery, and because of this, he combines practical expertise with his academic insight. So you'll get a lot of great information from Andreas, and we're very, very happy to have him and thankful that he accepted this invitation this morning. Fun fact, Andreas has published over 35 cases a lot of those in focus on the automotive industry. So you'll get great information from him, as I just said. And now, without further ado, I want to leave you with Violetta Gallagher.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And let's get started and jump right in. So today we'll be diving into the world of business cases. It's a powerful tool for critical thinking and decision making. We're going to explore what defines a business case. We're going to debunk common misconceptions, examine rejection insights, and discuss the essential elements of effective case writing. At least that's what I get to talk about. So let's get started. What is a case? First, what exactly is a business case? So a case is a structured narrative that presents a real business scenario. It's aimed at fostering problem solving, analysis, and decision making. Unlike theoretical models, cases bring the real messiness of real world situations where you might not know everything into the classroom. They serve as a bridge between academic concepts and practical application. A strong case answers the fundamental questions of who, what, when, where, and how in your opening paragraph. So who is involved? What is the issue or the opportunity? When is this decision taking place? Where is the context situation situated? And how are decisions being influenced? It also starts with, as I mentioned, a really strong opening paragraph. This is what helps set the stage. This is what introduces the dilemma and provides key context to engage the students in their reading and provides a focus. It's also crucial that the information and the data presented in the case reflect what is available to that focal point, to that protagonist at the time of the decision. This authenticity helps students immerse themselves in the scenario and appreciate the challenges of decision-making under real-world constraints. So cases are widely used in education to help learners think critically, deep strategic insights, and practice managerial judgment without making those mistakes in the real world. And before we move into really what's a case, we need to also understand the benefits of learning with cases. When you begin to think about writing and how you're going to use this, there are many benefits that students are exposed to when learning with cases. First, they are fun and they hold the student interest. This is so different than your typical lecture. They enhance the atmosphere of the classroom through group learning. It also allows students to practice their decision-making skills. So not only does it test your students' knowledge of what they have learned, but it also assists the professor with gauging the strength of their students' understanding of the topics or theories being discussed. Cases bridge the gap between theory and practice. This is real-life scenarios, and they help students relate better to the issues and task at hand. And students learn to become more competitive and manage uncertainty. They teach your students to become effective and confident team communicators within a safe and learning environment. Engagement through active learning and asking questions, dialogue, and debate. This is experimental learning at its core. It's proven to be an effective method of learning than back to your typical lecture style. So again, it's learning by doing and teaching, student participation and involvement in learning, development of interpersonal and communication skills, data interpretation and analysis skills and development, and decision-making process skills that are development under uncertainty. So let's move into the different types of cases that we here at Ivy Publishing publish. So they generally fall into 3 different categories, each with a unique feature and challenge. So a field-based case. These are interview-based cases that have been released for general distribution by the subject company. They offer rich first-hand insights and are often grounded in real-world organizational context. However, they do require consent to use form to be assigned to ensure proper permissions are in place. Kira will later speak to where you can find this and the importance of the consent to use. Also, we have published source cases. These cases draw from credible, publicly available materials. They cannot be disguised, and all data must be attributed to a reliable primary source. Authors must avoid attributing any statements, actions, or feelings to actual persons or organizations without proper consent or a credible source. And last but not least is general experience cases. These are based on your author's own experience within a real organization. So while these cases can be highly engaging, they are often disguised to protect identities and ensure confidentiality. Other types of materials that we do publish as well are industry notes and exercises. So if you're interested about that, please reach out to us in regards to those. So one of the reasons why we're here is to understand what cases are, and let's understand some misconceptions about cases. So first, the idea that cases must have the right answer. This is not true. The beauty of cases lies in the diversity of the perspectives and the solutions they elicit. Cases are designed to simulate complex decision-making where multiple solutions can coexist. Second, there's a misconception that writing a case is similar to storytelling. While the narrative is important, writing a case requires rigorous research, thoughtful structure, and alignment with specific teaching goals. I cannot stress that enough. Lastly, people often think only successful companies or scenarios make good cases. Definitely like our Amazon and our Tesla cases. However, on the contrary, some of the most impactful cases examine failures or ethical dilemmas, offering invaluable lessons, especially around small businesses or emerging markets. So now let's turn to the important topic, understanding why cases are often rejected and how to avoid these pitfalls. So we have spent a little bit of time in trying to put together what is it that a case gets rejected for. And we've subbed these out into 3 different categories: first-time submitters, regular submitters, and source-specific submitters issues. So for first-time submitters, the main reason for rejection is a lack of a clear decision point. A strong case revolves around a dilemma requiring resolution. If the central decision is not evident, the case lacks focus and becomes inefficient for teaching. Another common issue is submitting cases that are not decision-based. These cases may simply describe a situation without challenging the student to think critically or make choices. Remember to keep it forward thinking. And remember, decision-making is the cornerstone of a good case. So going back and focus on your opening paragraph, on your who, what, when, where, and how. For regular submitters, the most frequent reason for rejection is that the case does not meet the publishing's writing quality standards. So it just does not meet Ivy Publishing's standards any longer. This can happen when the narrative lacks clarity, cohesion, or depth. Another reason for regular submitters to be rejected is legal issues. So this can cause a rejection, particularly when the case involves sensitive or confidential information, or information that just needs copyright or permissions. It hasn't been properly anonymized or approved for publication. And when it comes to submission challenges for source types, field-based cases often face rejection due to insufficient content. Writers may struggle to gather enough data or perspectives to provide a comprehensive analysis. In field-based cases, we have one protagonist. However, don't be shy and ask questions and get interviews from others around the company. Cases based on published sources frequently lack a strong decision point. While they may be well-researched, they fail to provide the critical dilemma that makes a case engaging and educational. So keep all this in mind as you're writing a case to avoid these pitfalls. And one thing I definitely like to speak about often is what makes a great case. So let's turn to the key elements that make a business case truly effective. First is the decision point, that it's clearly laid out with your who, what, when, where, and how, and that it's engaging. And this is the decision point in relation to the case dilemma. Every great case revolves around a central dilemma. The decision point focuses the student's analysis and discussion. So for instance, should a company expand into a new market or invest in innovation? Next is relevancy. So is it relevant? Learn about a real business that students can then relate to. The case should reflect authentic challenges that resonate with the target audience. So think about your undergrads, your graduates, your A through PhD levels. Whether it's a global corporation or a local startup, the scenario should feel relatable and engaging. Also, think about your undergrad classroom. Who is it made up with, and who are those individuals going to become? They're probably going to start in roles such as managers or directors, so writing with relevancy to the protagonist's level. Not every student leaving that classroom is going to become the next CEO of Amazon. Another thing to keep in mind is versatility. So meaning that it's versatile and that it can be used over multi-dimensional topics or issues. So many cases quite often have strategy with a touch of operations, for example. And objectives. Teaching and learning, making sure that your teaching learning objectives are met. The case must align with specific learning outcomes, whether it's developing analytical skills, ethical reasoning, or strategic thinking. This alignment ensures that the case serves its educational purpose. The fifth point is data. So first, we start with, are there exhibits and are they clearly laid out? Effective cases provide sufficient data, background, and stakeholder perspectives. This ensures that the learners have the tools to build informed solutions. Context might include such as financial data, market trends, and internal company dynamics. Also, one thing that we hear very often about is large data sets. So if you have this available through a company or through external sources, include these as part of your submission. Every student likes playing with data. And last but not least, that it's engaging, an engaging story with compelling issues. So it's important that it's an engaging and there's a hook, especially in that opening paragraph. So it's important to acknowledge some of the challenges in case writing. Accessing real-world data can be difficult due to confidentiality. So striking the right balance between detail and conscious is another hurdle. Cases need to be rich enough to spark discussion, but not overwhelming and not giving out the answer. Finally, keeping the narrative engaging and thought-provoking, this does require creativity. So before moving into our fireside chat with Andres, just to sum up, cases are much more than just narratives. They're dynamic tools for learning and development. By understanding their definition, debunking these misconceptions, learning from rejection insights, and adhering to these key elements, we can create impactful cases that inspire critical thinking and foster meaningful discussions. Apologies there. So moving into our wonderful fireside chat, and thank you, Andreas, for joining us. And Laura has done the introduction here, but 35 cases that you've published with us, an industry expert and a faculty with many, many awards and backing. As one of our reviewers within Ivy Publishing, why do you think cases get rejected, and how would you say, or how would you avoid these common pitfalls?
Yeah, thank you, Violetta, for having me here, and hello, everyone. First of all, we are not in the business of rejecting cases. So submitting a case is a much more friendly process as a classic academic peer review process. We have double-blind reviews, and the goal is for, to tease out things in your specific research, and the rejection rate, the more renowned the journal is higher, right? So this is not the way we go about it. Every case basically that goes out to review has the potential to be published. So that's the first thing I would say. That's really important. This is a friendly process, right? We're trying to help. So beside the things that Violetta has already mentioned, I think most of these things, the most critical part is the connection between the case and the learning objectives. And is the case correctly set up? Is there a decision maker or multiple decision makers in the case? And is there enough tension in the case to come to a discussion in the classroom where you can hold the tension and learn from potentially different alternative outcomes, right? It's not just a description, a postmortem, what happened, right? So this is,
Yeah.
if the tension is not there, if it's not engaging, it is a novel, right? Or just a description, right? And so this is the one piece that I would say is most important. Secondly, alignment between structured learning objectives. It's not good enough to learn about why company XYZ is now, in this location, right? So how does it help me? How does location, for example, learning objective is understanding how location characteristics can affect um, company strategic outcomes or human resource needs or operational efficiencies. So it should be linked to a concept and ideally to a well-developed, academically grounded concept, right? I get a lot of cases and they do this, but they do it ceremonially and use Porter's five forces, right? I mean, Porter's five forces can be used as an industry analysis piece for every case technically, right? That
Yes.
some kind of performance outcome, but it's not always relevant, right? So the first one, no connection. The second one, ceremonial connection to something that really does not help us move forward with the case. The third one is and I have a little bit different perspective by now reviewing the latest maybe 100 cases or so, but in general, the students do not want to read if they have 3, 4, 5 cases a day to prepare that CEO Sarah Green sat in your office while the sunset was observable through the winter and she sipped her green tea to calm her down. This creates fiction. And I have often case workshop the discussion with authors, but this makes the case more personal. No, this doesn't make the case more personal, right? Because the students read this all the time and they discount the authenticity of a case and regard it as fiction or think it is just written for a purpose. Even though if Sarah Green has zipped a tea in the office, just leave it. It's not personalizing, right? But what is personalizing is when the decision is tied to a decision maker or 2 or 3 decision makers. Because my fundamental argument is that firms don't make decisions, organizations don't make decisions, individuals make decisions, right? So this is equally important to the decision point and to tying it to a concept that you want to debrief, right? The third one is, and as just said, I've changed my perspective a little bit. What I try now to do is not North Americanize every case, right? So there is value in context. So when you are in a different country, there's strong value for that one, and bringing this in is important, but that requires the author even to bridge more to the general public, right? Not less, right? It makes it more relevant to when you're in a specific state in India or in a specific province in China or in a specific state in Germany, whatever that is, if that helps me in the case in the end, right? A bit, that is good. But I need to make the bridge then. How can this case about Northern India being used by a Canadian or Chinese, American, Australian scholar, right? The personalization piece good, but the bridge needs to be created somewhere somehow. So now I'm getting in the deep with the recommendations, Violetta. I stop here. You have more questions.
No, and you're jumping in perfectly into, what do you as a reviewer look for in a strong case? And you mentioned to some of it is that local content and that local connection, and the protagonist connection and the authenticity. And I think that is so important. And when we're looking at cases, yes, they're fun, they're narrative, but having that connection to your learning objectives and that. So you spoke a little bit about this, but can you go a little bit more depth in what do you look for in a really strong case as a reviewer, and maybe even as a faculty if you're picking up a case to teach in the classroom?
Yeah, first of all, I look at, how clearly is it structured. And at Ivy, we have the preference to not structure the cases with too much noise. So we are trying to keep them short because, as a matter of fact, students read less and less, and they have more and more to read. That comes to the point. There's no benefit to it. And when I read my very first case, almost 25 years ago, and I had these long cases, 29, 30 pages, which would be now cases of 8, 9 pages of text. The argument was always, well, this describes the company better. That is fine, but this takes away from discussing the actual decision. So the complexity in length or structure does not help anymore. This ship has sailed, right? Altogether. And I don't want to talk about competitor publishing houses, but the length is created often by the publishing house or by cases that are submitted to case journals, right? Case journals, it becomes a Frankensteining of a case instead of a useful learning tool, right? So keep it nice and sweet. And if you talk about, go back to Sarah Green, who makes this decision about location in Northern India, right? So talk about it, talk about her background, but don't make it a page or too long. Only introduce the background that's really important. It's not important that she has, 2 children, 5 dogs, and loves to hike on the weekend, right? If this is not helpful for solving the decision, right? Leave it out. But you can say she's a seasoned executive across multiple industries, and as a child, she was already curious about foreign countries because she traveled. Good. 2 sentences, good enough, right? But often authors get carried away with these personal stories, right? So that's one thing. And then when it comes to local context, again, ask yourself, how does it help in creating a richer, more diverse, and more alternative supporting case discussion, right? So that's important. Another aspect, what I often see, sorry, Violetta, because it's on the same topic.
No, this is great.
Aspect often why these things come in and unbalance a case when you have precious little space to put case in is that you want to please the decision maker, right? So there's often a lot of value statements about the greatness of Sarah Green. Sarah Green was great, and she was awarded so much, and the best decision maker ever, ever, ever. And this is often to please the decision maker and please the person who signs off. A strong case, and a good case writer helps during the interview and in the post-interview release process and the pre-interview release process, because I usually do it pre-interview, at least initiated, to explain the need for tension in the case and explain that learning from failure is often much, much, much more valuable than learning from success. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I can't agree more. And that is something that we definitely see over and over again, especially in cases that are field-based, that there is a leader that wants their case to be seen as a successful company, and this is where you should work. But that is not the purpose of a case. That's a purpose of an article or a media outlet. So you have many real life examples. Advice on improving your submissions. What were the key things that you would say, this is what I'm going to use for my submission?
So what do you mean? Can you repeat this
So what would you help with the authors in improving their submissions? Seeing the reviewing cases, not only do we have the decision point and the lack of that, but what are some of the other sort of maybe little details that the submissions are missing?
I think our structure and our guide to good case is very, very clear. What is really helpful is, be sure that you have exhibits. Make sure that you have a teaching note that does not just repeat what is written in the case, but walks an instructor through the analysis, right? Help the instructor in the synopsis to understand what's the purpose of this case, right? Cases with a teaching note have significantly higher pickup rates and that's the reason why we require a teaching note, right? By instructors. But so this is a critical point. And then I would strongly recommend to test teach the case. Via courses, the case gets better. Test teach and then see what's happening. I do this with most of my cases, I have to say, I test teach, and those that I write and want to have published quickly, because I believe it's value for inventory. When I teach it, I go back to the teaching note and revise the teaching note, even tweak potentially the case after that. But I try not to do this to Ivy Publishing because my colleagues are very busy on that one, and this is touching the case multiple times, is difficult. I just have had this, right, Kira? I just asked you to send me my latest case, which was published 2 weeks ago, and I have not tweaked it yet. It's a case I taught in September in Vienna. I now published. I used in the MBA classes about Volkswagen's current dilemma about deglobalization and EVs, and it's an evolving situation, right? And the reason why I wanted to open up particularly the teaching note is to bring some current materials in or to tweak the case that it has more longevity, right? So that it is, but I have decided not to tweak the case, but I will add likely media links and other things to the teaching note, right? So these are reasons why I say test, teach, and then
Yes.
submit, right?
And that is so important. And we really do, when we get submissions in, we can see a teaching note that has a case because of the teaching note that hasn't been a case taught yet or has just simply been written. And like you said, it's in the level of detail that's in there and the way that you can see the flow of the board plan and what that classroom discussion is going to look like. And we highly encourage you to go back if you've taught it a few times and you've now said, you know what, these 2 questions I always ask, please update your teaching note. It is going to be helpful. If you've updated it, it's going to be helpful for the person that is adopting that case as well. So last but not least, crafting compelling decision points. We talk a lot about opening paragraphs, strong decision points, connecting it to teaching, to the teaching learning objectives. What, in your opinion, makes a strong decision point, and what are some tips in creating this?
So as I said, I have a lot of cases that I've also written for inventory, but just because I have the opportunity to write it, and I squeeze in case writing process between the journal publication process, just fun, right? Because it's a different process, right? But usually what I do, I now look for cases that where I can update my materials as such. So one aspect is this topic of deglobalization, and I have actually 2 cases along these lines, right? The second one, I started much earlier. I actually started 3 years ago. I've still not finished writing, actually, because the decision point is not strong enough, right? This is about Kercher, the global leading pressure washer company. I personally know the CEO in the meantime very well, right? I got introduced and then we talked and so on. But I have not had a grip on a strong decision point because what I originally wanted to write about his move to more self-sustained regionalization, right, is interesting, but there's a much more interesting piece here in the situation, and I want to engage with them. And so I'm not 100% aligned yet with the decision maker and the right decision point. So the Volkswagen case, I basically wrote within 5 days, right? No problem, because I knew exactly what I wanted to write. Lots of material out there, lots of tension I could build from a large company like that. But in Kercher, it's a private held company. It's much more difficult to get these, tension built out. So when I go to the industry, and he has to sign off in the end, right? Which is great, by the way. Having a interview-based case is the gold standard, I would say, right? With a strong decision point. But I have not had this decision point, right? And in the end, for me, it's the usefulness of the case over finishing a case project. I have enough cases. I don't need them anymore just for the sake of, saying I have 35 or 40 or whatever. Not important. I want to have a powerful tool.
Yes.
The great feeling, by the way, when you go to the conference and says, hey, I last week used your XYZ case. So it's a great case. And they know me as a researcher at the conferences, but when you have this double connection, it's just very powerful and nice. And you can come into this situation, you come up with completely new situation for your cases because your colleagues say, hey, I use your case, but I use it for this and this, right?
And
Uh,
that's,
no, I'm
and
getting a little bit too far, Violetta.
no,
But
I think that's fantastic. That really speaks to, you know, what makes a great case. One of those points being that it could, that diversity, that you could have that ability to do that. And then also our global, you know, connection. Research gets read. We always, you know, say your research gets read by, you know, 5, 10 people. But a case is used worldwide. And, you know, as an author, you get to see where your case is being used and by who, which is really great and exciting. And back to, you know, those cases that are sitting at your desk. I know there's so many faculty that have cases that are in draft mode, and I'm sure they probably have, you know, a couple hundred, depending on the author and how long you've been in the industry for. But really, it is about getting that right engagement, that action trigger for your decision point, and that storyline cut is so crucial in a opening paragraph and a decision point to make sure that it's critical. So thank you so much, Andreas. That was very insightful. And you know, we'll have Andreas as part of the Q&A as well to answer any questions in terms of from a reviewer, from a faculty, and you know, just as a researcher as well. So over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Violetta and Andreas. That was wonderful. Very, very insightful. Thank you so much, both of you. And I'm sure a lot of you have questions. I've seen questions come in, but as I said, we're going to address those at the end, because now let's hear from Kira Harnett, who will talk about the publishing process at Ivy Publishing and much more.
Hello, everyone. Today, I'm excited to walk you through a highlight of our team. I'll briefly go over some of our resources and supports that we have available, and I'll also briefly cover our publication process. So first off, I'll start with a bit of background about how you might interact with our team throughout your case writing and publishing journey. So we have a product assistant who diligently monitors our published cases inbox, and they answer all questions promptly, and they can connect you with the appropriate resource or team member. They verify that all required forms are complete with our submissions, and they assist the product team with key tasks. As many of you might know, we also have a dedicated team of product coordinators who are committed to ensuring a smooth and enriching author experience. Think of them as not just advisors, but partners in your journey. So they will answer your questions, they provide constructive feedback, and they help to guide you through the revisions to help enhance your case's impact. As Andreas was saying, we're really here to help. We want to get the best from your cases. So it really is that collaborative approach of, you know, items and things that we feel that would make your case more impactful. Of course, our academic reviewers play a crucial role in maintaining the rigor and relevance of our products. They offer their expert insights and offer constructive feedback. They evaluate our products to contribute to a richer learning experience for both students and instructors. Additionally, we also have a wealth of editorial expertise, and this is led by our in-house senior editor, and we also have a team of freelance editors to assist with any grammar, spelling, and to help tweak any writing issues. As a whole team, though, we love engaging not only with our submitted authors, but with prospective authors as well. So if you do have a case draft or idea and you require some support or you have any questions, please do feel free to send us an email at publishedcases@ivy.ca. We will arrange a call or provide an email response. We're happy to review case drafts, discuss general case ideas, and advise on submission readiness. In addition to that, we also have our case writing workshops. So in these workshops, participants actually learn how to craft a case for delivery in class and online learning. Included with our workshops is the opportunity to participate in a practicum. So what these are is you actually get the opportunity to receive one-on-one support from a member of the publishing team. This support is tailored to wherever you are in your case writing process. So it helps to bridge the gap between the workshop and publication readiness. We also have submission resources on our website to help guide you. There you can find our submission guidelines, our teaching note layout, case writing videos, those consent to use forms that Violetta was talking about earlier, and our citation guidelines. So now I'm just going to go over very briefly our submission checklist. So before you submit, please make sure you have all of the necessary components. And I'll briefly touch on the most common ones that we look for, and especially those that play into maybe those rejections that you may have seen. So first off, our forms. Field cases, as Violetta had said, are those that are based on interviews, and we do require that our consent to use form is signed by the company or protagonist. And we do require that that form be the one that we have available on our website. Published sources. So without signed consent, you cannot make any statements about the thoughts, feelings, actions, or intentions of any person without a published source reference. All research needs to be supported by a published source reference using a footnote, and citations need to be formatted using the Chicago Manual of Style. Finally, a note on copyright. So this is something that comes up quite often in our cases. So if an image or graph or model is readily available online, we still require written permission from the copyright holder to be able to publish it. We also can't publish screenshots of websites without written permission. To get around this, what we most commonly recommend that authors do is either they link to the image in the case or that they rework the image so that it's visually significantly different than the original. A source citation is still always required, but as long as it's visually significantly different, we can work with you to make sure that it's not violating any copyright laws. Finally, please ensure that you do take a look at our teaching note template. It is on our website, and it provides the exact layout for you to use for your submission. Additionally, as Andreas and Violetta spoke about, for the analysis section, please ensure that you include the most appropriate answer to the question with support from the case, anticipated discussion between the students, and teaching tips so that an instructor gets a good idea of how to facilitate the classroom discussion. Now, I'll very briefly just go over our publishing process. And so you do start with your submission. Please do go online, take a look at our resources, and when you're ready to submit, you will use our online process to submit your case, teaching note, and supporting material. And as Violetta had stated earlier, you can also submit other products online, such as exercises and industry or technical notes. We then go into what's called the review process, and that is where you are paired with a product coordinator who will work with you from submission to publication. They will provide feedback in preparation for an academic content review, and at this stage, you most likely will be asked to revise your case. Then your product will go through our academic content review, where the submission will be evaluated in a double-blind peer review by qualified experts here at Ivy Business School. If everything is in order, all of the revisions have been complete, your submission will then be accepted for publication. At which time your product will go through to our editing team, and they will go through the files. They will help you with any grammar, spelling, and writing issues, and you'll be asked to respond to questions and suggested revisions. And again, your product coordinator is here to assist you, to help you with the feedback, and to help you incorporate those changes if you do have any questions. Afterwards, if everything is all taken care of, your product will be prepped and it will be published on our website, and it will be available through our global distribution network. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kira. That was great. Lots of great information and resources that we will share after this session with all of you, just so that you have them. And the process is also available on our website. All you have to do is go to our homepage, click on publish, and all the details of our process are there available to you. Now, Kira's not going anywhere. Kira's staying with us because we have our Q&A session. Very exciting, the moment that a lot of people have been waiting for. So let's get started. I will read the questions, and then one of our experts, depending on their expertise, will answer them. And if we don't get to any of these questions for whatever reason, in the follow-up email, these questions will be answered. Great. So let's get started. We have a question that says, for a case developed on secondary sources, is a saved Adobe copy sufficient of a source? Are they audited by Ivy at times when needed?
Kira, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I can answer that one. So the answer is it depends. It depends on where this Adobe copy was obtained, how it was obtained, and if we actually have permission to use it. So if it is an Adobe PDF, something that's available to be found online, we would require a source. We can source it. That's perfectly acceptable with all the proper referencing. If it is something that was given to you by the company during your interviews, it is covered by that consent to use release form, so we can use it then as well.
Great. We have another question that says, I have a case which I use in supply chain management in a supply chain management course. It involved using optimization techniques to answer questions. Students submit a spreadsheet containing many recommended worksheets. Will Ivy be interested in something like this?
Yes, yes.
We're all like, yes, absolutely. Yes, please, please. I think that's wonderful, and especially using and that ability to practice. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Moving on. I find the advice here somewhat conflicting. Somebody says, a case is about a decision point, but it's also a storytelling. Please help me understand how to manage the presentation of the personal story, because for my cases, the personal story is an important lens for understanding the decisions taken and the options or lack thereof for the protagonist. This is a good one. Who wants to answer?
Let me take that one because I think it refers to a comment I made. What I refer to as storytelling was fiction. So if you make something up or which sounds like fiction or doesn't help, sipping a coffee, watching the sunset is a nice story, but not helping. A personal development story of a protagonist that helps explain the background of this protagonist's decision-making framing is of course important. And this can be told in a story, but it needs to be a fine balance of not providing too many unnecessary information because of space constraints, and at the same time not creating also a fictional story as such. And the critical part here are these value statements in the description, right? You can say Sarah Green, right, struggled on her assignment going abroad because she had never had the experience. As a child, she was just at the lake around the corner. That is a personal story and explains, okay, that person, right, may be great because she has a great personality, you know, and went through this and this education, but doesn't have the personal experience, right? Or vice versa. And value statements are when you say that specific characteristics or the background are very good, very accomplished, very, you know, make it value statements that do not lead to a discussion that teases out the critical elements of the description of the individual, right? And again, we are not looking for strategy cases only, right? Behavioral cases are very, very valued, right? But they're actually a bit more tricky to write because of the balance between value statements and building attention up here specifically. I hope, Natasha, that this has helped answer the question, right? We are very much looking forward for those. No fiction, though.
No fiction. And again, as Andrea said, it depends on discipline. Some of them too, you know, an HR case may have a bit more about the protagonist than a operations case. So it also depends on the discipline you're teaching and learning outcomes and objectives.
Great. We have a question here that specifically it's relevant for this session. Somebody had their case rejected and they want some feedback. So he says, I submitted a case to Ivy and it got rejected with the comment to improve the teaching note only. Does this mean that the rest of the case was okay? Who wants to tackle this one?
Kara, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, for sure. It depends. So yes and no, because the teaching note is so crucial to the case, as Andreas and Violetta had gone over, those learning objectives and tying that learning objective back to the case is vital to make a strong, compelling case. So if the teaching note needs improvement, the case could be fine, but it means that that connection hasn't been made in the most optimal way. So that being said, when you do, chances are you are going to have to change items up in your case so that those two align. Or if the case is in a good spot and you feel that that's the story you want to tell and that's the decision that you want to go with, then you would be changing your teaching note more comprehensively so that it aligns better with your case.
Laura, there are two questions above. They are very quick to answer. If you don't. Yeah.
Okay, yes. You want to go with those? I have one here that our team has flagged. If you want to go with this one first, 1 second. It says, can we resubmit our case after revision if it has been rejected? Do I still have any chances? Thank you so much.
Absolutely, you can resubmit, and we love to see resubmissions. It means that you are taking the feedback, and that's what's crucial. You're taking the feedback that was provided by the product coordinator, by the reviewer potentially, and making that case and teaching note better. And so what we like to see is that when you do resubmit, though, that those changes have been made, and that it isn't just, light little touches here and there, that there are substantial changes that have been made, and all the feedback and concerns have been addressed.
Great. Thank you, Violetta. Okay, so yes, Andreas, we go with this one. It's a three-part question. It says, what's the minimum word limit to create a case? Number two, can an exercise analytics case be based on hypothetical context and data? And the third one, in case of secondary source case, can decision point be non-manager specific?
So this one is very quick, right? What is the minimum word limit? Technically, there's no minimum word limit on that one. I have cases that are 1.5 pages, and I teach them over a 3-hour period, right? And I have much longer cases as well, right? And there's no minimum word limit, but it's what we talked earlier about. Is there a teaching objective? Is there enough attention in the case to have a meaningful discussion, right? And we have even series of cases where you have ABC that escalates a certain discussion, right? Either by audience or by situations whatsoever. Absolutely no lower word limit. An upper word limit, they're getting really, really tense if it's more than, you would say, a lower number than I would say right now. But 10 pages, you got to justify yourself, right? You got
Yeah.
really, really difficult with 10 pages of text, right?
Absolutely. And we try to aim for really 8 pages. And I would even say that we're trying to aim for 6, because we know, and as you had said, Andreas, right, students are not reading as much, or they are reading as much, but there's so many more other materials that they have to read. And so in order to have that engaging conversation. And back to the word limit, we actually have a case based on 7 tweets. And so it's just 7 tweets, but the teaching note is over 30 pages long.
Yeah.
Is
So
it Maple Foods, right?
it's Maple Foods, yes.
It's very good. It's a great case.
So to the second question, can an exercise analytics case be based on hypothetical context and data? No. You got to justify what you have, right? You can ask the students an open question and say, from the data available, what would you, how do you would you go forward? Because managers don't have perfect information. That's totally fine, right? That's completely fine. But you do not create hypothetical context and data. There's a difference between this and disguised numbers, right?
Absolutely.
Disguised numbers still have a real connection, real ratio, but instead of having 100 million sales, the company may have 112 million, 150 million, whatever. This can be done with a multiplier, but the structure remains the same, right? So on this one, hypothetical things and fictional data, we don't like that, right? But we could have a case where the decision maker does not have the data, and the data need to be pulled. So you have supplementary material and say, hey, shouldn't they have looked at the World Bank data, for example, right? And then you create in the teaching note, hey, you looking now at the World Bank data, what different decisions would you have made? Right? For example, that works. But creating something that is hypothetical or in the case body itself, not the right way. Do it through teaching notes and supplementary material, right? And no fiction. So the last question, yeah, of course, decision points can be non-managers, right? I take a case I often use. I think it's a Darden case, though. It's called Carter Racing, right? And there is a non-manager. It's a mechanic that is being overlooked. The decisions are being made by the leadership, but really the non-manager should have made the decision and being involved in that one. It's about team think and the reduction of sourcing information, or the limitation of sourcing information from people who are not in decision points. Absolutely, this works. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, there needs to be some tangible outcome, how the case helps organizational progress or individuals in roles to become better, right? Because that's the goal of education at the end, right? Learn from these situations. And,
Great.
and
Sorry.
then Arup had that question about the negative. I had this, right? Several times. It's hard. It's hard to keep the negative in the case. You do it, you set it up before you write the case. Hey, say, we need to talk about the struggle a bit, right? And when you see that they want just the positive and shine and make it a shiny brochure, just don't bother. Yeah. So Volkswagen, my two Volkswagen cases are both quite challenging, but there are so many public quotes in there. I used to work for Volkswagen 25 years ago, right? So I could go, I mean, people have rotated around, but I still have a great network there. I could have written the case from managerial's mouth, but because they're in the press all the time, I can quote them directly what they said in the press instead of limiting myself to going to legal in this case. On the other hand, I had a case, same situation about a car share company, which was owned by Mercedes. And as soon as the case was done, it was great. My contact, which was not a CEO, agreed with that one. And then it went to the legal department. Yeah? Went to the legal department and they wanted to cut the entire competitor information out of the case. I said, no, I'm not doing this. Right? I'm not doing this. This is important for the case analysis. Yeah, but we don't want to have their name next to our name. I said, this is a teaching case, right? You agreed to this one. So in the end, and this is just being an experienced case writer, maybe, and not having to publish that, I told them either you agree to sign off, which has been signed off by management already, or I rewrite this case completely from public sources, and then you have no say in what is in the case or not, right? And then eventually I got the release. But this is a very, 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 very hard hammer to use, right? I don't recommend that. But try to convince early that the struggles and the negative pieces are important, right? For the learning and how the CEO or the manager or the non-manager can help foster stronger um, a stronger talent pool. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Andres. That was very insightful. Great information. We have a quick one. Maybe you can address it as well, Andres. Is how do we know the information we provided in the case is good enough? Because information in the case feels like the more the merrier.
Yeah, so this is again, your objective to write a case is a teaching tool. And if the teaching tool doesn't provide you with the tension that is required for a diverse discussion, right, then you probably don't have enough information, right? Or maybe too much of the wrong information. That's why I said at the beginning, I encourage very much, and Violetta supported this, test teach. Try it out. And you don't need to test the entire case. You can start off with a newspaper clip or with a page. You write it down. You write very quickly the opening paragraph, few tensions, and then you test teach an element of your case, right, in a session. For example, we test teach right now not hypothetical, but test teach the scenario that the company is facing if the president-elect would introduce 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods, right? So you can test teach and see, is that actually a rich enough situation to write the case about it, right? Or move the decision point forward to say, well, we look at the previous decision making and then just see if there's enough information for that one, right? I would say in general, you have more information than you need. Second, in the interview process, make sure the higher ranked the manager is or the individual is you interview, the less likely it is that you get another hour for an interview. So you need to set yourself up to receive follow-up information, right? And that might be another person in the organization, right? Might be the executive assistant, might be engineer, it might be whatever, HR department, whatever, right? So that you have the ability to gather additional information in the situation of an interview case. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Well, we've reached the end. Unfortunately, we don't have time for more. But as I said, we will make our best effort to answer all of your questions in writing in our follow-up email. And we invite you to wait for that email because you'll get to see the recording of this session. You'll get to read the recaps. And of course, go to our website, hit that contact tab, and send us all your questions. Also, we recently launched a help center. The help center is there for you to answer all the questions, basic questions that you may have. So that's a great resource. Our team updates the health center with knowledge articles very frequently. And now I want to thank our panelists. Andreas, thank you. You were wonderful as usual. Violeta, you and I are partners in this. Thank you so much for your support and your knowledge. And Kira, thank you so much for bringing your expertise. And to all of you, thank you for joining. We're here to help. We're very, very proud to be the publisher of choice. And we have a great team that is always ready to support you. So don't be shy, reach out. At the end of the day, this is the Ivy Publishing difference. That's it. That's all we have for now. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.